They stopped Keanu Reeves at the gates of the Vatican. No one recognized him, and what happened next inside St. Peter's Basilica would leave every witness stunned, and one guard changed forever. But to understand what really happened that day, we have to go back to the moment he arrived, alone, unannounced, and carrying something no one could see, but everyone would feel. They didn't recognize him, not at first. He was wearing a faded black hoodie, worn boots, and carried no entourage, just a crumpled ticket and a quiet expression. Under the blazing Roman sun, Keanu Reeves walked alone toward the gates of St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, hoping to spend a few hours in silent reflection. But to the guards stationed at the entrance, he didn't look like a movie star. He looked like a man who didn't belong, and they let him know it. "Sir, this entrance is restricted. Please wait back," barked one of the Swiss guards, eyes narrowing as he scanned Keanu from head to toe. The others stood firm, their halberds crossed slightly, symbolic but unmistakably defensive. Tourists began to glance over. Some whispered, some laughed. Not because they recognized him, but because they thought this was a man trying to sneak in. But Keanu didn't argue. He simply nodded, stepped back, and looked around like he might disappear. The cameras didn't flash. No one offered a helping hand. In that moment, he was just another invisible face in the crowd. That's when something shifted. A younger guard, clearly newer, less hardened, leaned toward a senior officer and whispered urgently. He'd seen something. A glimpse. Maybe the eyes. Maybe the walk. Maybe a poster once hung in his childhood room. But he recognized him. "Wait, that's Keanu Reeves." The senior scoffed. "That? Don't be ridiculous." But the young guard wasn't backing down. His voice trembled, but his eyes didn't. "Sir, I'm sure of it." The older guards laughed again. "If that's Keanu Reeves, I'm the Pope." Still, the younger one moved, slowly, deliberately. He stepped past the others and approached Keanu with hesitation and awe. "Excuse me, are you—" Keanu looked up. For the first time, he smiled. The guard froze. It was him. No cameras. No PR team. No announcement. Just him. And that raised a question that would haunt everyone who stood there that day. Why was one of the most recognizable men in the world standing outside St. Peter's Basilica, alone, unnoticed, and almost turned away? The answer, as it turns out, would leave the Vatican stunned. The guard didn't move. He just stared, locked in the kind of disbelief that only comes when a myth becomes a man. Keanu nodded gently, as if to say, "Yes, it's really me. But please don't make a scene." The guard took a breath, then turned back toward the others. "He's coming in," he said. Silence. The older guard stepped forward sharply. "You're out of line. No identification. No appointment. You don't override protocol just because someone looks familiar." "But it's not just anyone," the younger one insisted. "He's not here for publicity. Look at him." And everyone did. Keanu stood quietly, a few feet back. His head was slightly bowed, his hands tucked in his pockets. He wasn't recording. He wasn't asking for special treatment. He wasn't even explaining himself. He was just waiting. It was then, strangely, finally, that the older guard really looked. And something cracked. This wasn't a stunt. This wasn't a tourist fishing for attention. This was a man carrying something heavy, not in his hands, but on his face. Fine, the officer muttered. 1 hour. Escort him. That's when the gate opened. Keanu stepped through the threshold of St. Peter's Basilica, a place he'd dreamed of visiting for decades, not because of its fame, but because of what it represented: silence, surrender, and a final goodbye. No one knew it yet, but he wasn't just here for sightseeing. He was here to say something to someone one last time. But before he could take more than 5 steps inside, a voice called after him. "Why are you here?" It wasn't hostile. It was honest, even curious. Keanu turned. He didn't blink. He didn't dodge. He answered with a question of his own. "Do you believe you can speak to someone who's no longer here?" The basilica was quiet. Even the tourists seemed to pause. That was the moment everything shifted. From a celebrity sighting to something sacred. The young guard didn't answer. He couldn't. The question wasn't meant for him. It echoed far deeper than the marble walls of St. Peter's Basilica. Keanu wasn't looking for permission. He was searching for peace. And so he walked past Michelangelo's Pietà, past the golden altars tourists came from all over the world to see. But his eyes weren't on the art. They were on the floor. Step after step, silent, deliberate, like he was following something no one else could see. The young guard trailed behind, unsure if he was supposed to speak or simply witness. Finally, Keanu stopped at a small corner chapel just off the main aisle. It wasn't marked. It wasn't crowded. But to him, it meant everything. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something barely visible. A worn, folded photograph. It was an old picture of a woman. No caption, no date. Just her. Keanu knelt. And then, for the first time in over a decade, he whispered aloud a name that fans wouldn't recognize, but meant the world to him. Jennifer. Viewers will pause here. Search engines will light up. Who was she? What happened? And why had he carried this photo to the most sacred place on earth without telling a soul? The truth, quietly unfolding in the next few moments, would explain everything. He didn't come to be seen. He came to let go. Because this was where they were supposed to visit together years ago, before the diagnosis, before the grief, before the world knew what he had lost. This was their dream, one never fulfilled until now. But not everyone watching him understood. A Vatican official had noticed the attention, the whispers, the smartphones beginning to lift. He didn't like it. He approached quickly, his voice low but firm. "Sir, we ask that visitors don't linger or conduct private rituals without permission. Please return to the main aisle." The words were cold, official, and completely unaware of who they were addressing. But Keanu didn't protest. He just looked up and smiled. Not for them, for her. That's when the young guard stepped forward again. Not as security, but as a witness. "Let him be," he said. "He's not breaking anything." The official frowned. "And you are?" The guard looked him dead in the eye. "Human." That answer would spark debate across thousands of comment sections. But in that moment, it ended the conversation and allowed something more powerful to begin. The crowd backed off, not because they were told to, but because something had shifted in the air, something wordless but heavy. Even those who didn't know who he was could feel it. This wasn't a celebrity moment. This wasn't for cameras. This was a man finishing a chapter no one else could write. Keanu stayed kneeling for what felt like an eternity. No phones were raised, not anymore. Somehow, even the tourist knew this wasn't something to record. It was something to respect. And then slowly, he stood. The photo remained in his hand. He didn't tuck it away. He didn't explain. He just looked at the altar, breathed in the incense-filled silence, and did something that caught even the priest nearby off guard. He walked over to the donation box and slid in the photograph. People gasped quietly, not because it was valuable, but because it wasn't. It was priceless to him. And he let it go. That action, a man giving away the last physical memory of someone he loved, said more than 1,000 interviews ever could. He didn't come to visit the Vatican. He came to leave a part of himself in it. But the story wasn't over. Because just as he turned to leave, the older guard from earlier stepped forward again. And for the first time, he apologized. "I misjudged you." Keanu looked him in the eye and said the one thing no one expected. "Number, you judged me correctly." The pause that followed was deafening. He wasn't being sarcastic. He meant it. "I looked like a stranger, and I was. But one of you saw me." That moment, that line, would end up tattooed, captioned, and quoted across millions of social media posts. Not just because it was poetic, but because everyone knew what it meant. We've all been overlooked. We've all been mistaken for less than we are. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to see the truth in us. The older guard didn't reply. He just stood there, stiff in posture, but softer in the eyes. Something about this man, this moment, had cracked open something deeper than protocol. And as Keanu turned to walk away, it was no longer silence that followed him. It was reverence, not for the movie star, for the human being. The young guard, still at his side, broke the quiet with a hesitant question, one that had been burning in him since the beginning. Why didn't you tell them who you were? Keanu paused mid-step. His reply came gently, not rehearsed, not dramatic. I wasn't here to be someone. I was here to remember someone. The young man swallowed hard. In that moment, Keanu wasn't just a visitor. He was a mirror, reflecting something deeply human that every person watching would feel. The pain of loss, the need for closure, the search for meaning in a world that moves too fast to notice. And then, just before exiting the great Basilica, Keanu did one last thing. He turned back and whispered something into the vast, echoing space. We don't hear what he says. The microphones don't catch it. But the camera catches the expression on his face. The kind of peace that only comes when a burden is finally laid down. He steps through the doors, back into the Roman sun, back into the noise of the world, and walks away. No escort, no fame, no followers. Just a man who came to say goodbye and left with something lighter than he arrived with. The young guard watches him disappear into the crowd, and when asked later what Keanu said in that final whisper, he simply replies, I don't think he was talking to us. Have you ever carried something too long, just waiting for the right place to let it go? If this story moved you, even for a moment, leave a comment below. Tell us who you'd visit if you had just one chance to say goodbye. And if you believe the world needs more stories like this, hit subscribe. We've only just begun.